I'm going to show you some basic tips on how to fillet a tuna loin. As you can see here, we have a section of the loin. This is just the loin part. The skin has already been removed from the fish. But typically speaking, this is what you're going to be looking at. This is kind of representative more of the head of the tuna. The rest of the fish comes back this way, and this is the part of the tail. Generally speaking, the tail is a lot more fibrous. It doesn't have as good quality of meat. If you have the option, you want to select closer to the head, and the prices may usually reflect that. So as you can see, this is the bottom of the fish. There's usually the skin of the fish underneath here, but it's already been removed. However, that doesn't mean that this fish is all completely ready to use. You still have to remove the bottom portion of the fish. I don't know if you can see this, but as you can see here, there is a distinctive line here that kind of segments the prime part of the meat with the part of the meat that's closer to the skin. There's a line there that separates it. We're going to cut off that part. It doesn't have to be exact, but generally speaking, you're trying to shave that part off, and what we're going to do is deal with that half in a little different way than the rest of the meat. You can see there's kind of a line here, and that's going to match the grain of the fish that we were showing you earlier here. So what we want to do is we want to just take this line, and we want to cut into it, just like this, okay? This loin has been frozen from the manufacturer. That's why it's still a little bit on the frozen side, which makes it a little easier to cut than when it's completely thawed. So I like working with the fish when it's still kind of, maybe 30% still in its frozen state. That way the fish is also fresh. As you can see, I'm just slicing into this line here, and I'm mimicking the natural line that was towards the skin side of the fish. And as I keep making my incision deeper and deeper, I just follow the line, and I follow the diagonal, the natural diagonal down to the bottom of the fish. This is what I call kind of the skin side of the fish. It's very fibrous, and it's not necessarily the best for eating. Obviously not for sashimi or sushi. What we're going to do is we're going to just take this, and you're going to just firmly scrape off all the meat with a spoon. And we're going to use that either for tekamaki or spicy tuna or other things like that. So you're just going to take this piece and just scrape it off, as you can see, okay? So we're not going to do that right now, but that's how you're going to handle this bottom piece for the future, okay? What we're going to show you here is now how do we deal with the prime loin part of the fish, okay? So general rule is it's resting flat. Let it rest in its natural state. Remember, again, this is partially frozen, so it's much more firm. If it was completely thawed, the meat would be much softer and maybe a little bit harder to cut. What I like to do is go straight down into strips that are, I wouldn't even say an inch thick. Okay? I know I made a bit of a sawing motion with the knife, and I can get away with that primarily because the fish is still in its frozen state. But in general, when you have your very sharp sushi knife, you want to make your single incision, and you want to kind of slide it across the meat. In this case, it's still pretty frozen, so it's a little hard for me to do that. As you can see, I'm just slicing straight down, straight down, straight down, straight down, and I would say, what, ½ inch, not quite an inch width right here, okay? And we're going to make sure that our cuts are clean. And it's important that your cuts are even. I know this sounds rather obvious, but it's pretty difficult to cut straight down until you practice a little bit. Your cuts, when you first begin, you'll be a little bit crooked, you'll be uneven. You'll learn this over time, okay? So now that we have our strips like this, what we're going to do is we're going to take our strips and we're going to deal with these individually. So now we have this beautiful, nice strip like this. What you want to do is trim your edges, okay? And we're going to use these pieces also for our tekamaki, for our spicy tuna, or for our tuna poke. Nothing gets wasted, right? We don't waste anything. That's a big part of sushi making. I'm going to remove these for now. Put these on the other board here. And it's important to note that the fish has, if we cut it correctly, you will be able to see the natural grains. I don't know if you can see that, but you can see the natural grains of the fish. They're at a diagonal. If you flip it over, maybe it's a little more prominent on this side. When we cut sushi or sashimi, we always want to cut against the grain. What this is going to do is it's going to help us when biting the fish. If we cut against the grain, the fish will break off perfectly and very delicately when we bite into it. Okay? So as you can see, I'm right-handed. So my natural tendency is to fillet fish at this angle, okay? If you're left-handed, everything's going to be reversed. But since I'm right-handed, here are the grain patterns of the fish. I'm going to cut against the grain. So when you're cutting a sushi slice, it's a little bit different than sashimi. This positioning of the knife, there are 3 planes. This will determine the length of your slice, this adjustment. This adjustment will determine the width of the piece you're cutting. And this adjustment, the spacing is going to determine how fat the slice is as well. So let's just do sashimi then. We'll stay away from sushi. We're going to cut against the grain. We're going to make a nice little cut here. Okay? And we want to flip over each edge, and we want to look at our pieces. You're inspecting your fish for any abnormalities, any abrasions, any weird things inside. So I'm also looking at each piece of fish as I cut. That's also what I'm doing. I start with the back end of the knife, and I make a nice slice all the way down. Make sure I touch the tip to the cutting board, and make a nice, clean, beautiful slice. As you can see, this is why we trim the edges off in the beginning. It gives us a nice, beautiful cut of sashimi. And I make sure I'm reconstructing my fish exactly as I took it off, so when you replate it up, it'll look beautiful. So you can see the width is important. The angle will determine the width of my cut, and this axis point determines the length of the cut. So you want to keep everything consistent and similar. See, I'm flipping it over. So I'm making this cut, and I'm flipping it over, okay? Okay. So in a nutshell, these are the basic starting points for you guys to learn how to cut sashimi. Different fish is going to have a little bit of a different texture and construction, but generally speaking, this is the key to helping you guys cut sashimi. All right, so hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know if you have any other questions, and maybe we can do some follow-up stuff for you. Thank you.